Christian
My name is Father Joseph Lucas. I serve in the Orthodox Church in America.
My name is Father Anthony Cook. I serve in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America.
And I'm Father Andrew Stephen Damick, Chief Content Officer of Ancient Faith Ministries and a priest of the Antiochian Archdiocese. And we're the Orthodox Intro team.
If you're looking for a first stop online to get an introduction to the Orthodox faith,
A place to get answers to questions from qualified Orthodox Christian clergy.
A place to send your friends and not just toss them into the chaos of the internet.
A place to get help finding an Orthodox parish and get plugged into an actual Orthodox community. Then point your web browser at orthodoxintro.org. OrthodoxIntro.org is a free service of Ancient Faith Ministries and made possible by our donors. It's an Orthodox on-ramp to the Christian life. Again, that's OrthodoxIntro.org.
Proclaiming Christ, victor over sin and death. You're listening to Ancient Faith Radio, your Orthodox Internet radio connection.
This is Ancient Faith Today with Father Tom Soroka, a weekly live call-in show addressing the issues of our day from a distinctly Orthodox perspective. You can join the conversation by calling in at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Father Tom is the priest at St. Nicholas Orthodox Church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and welcomes guests from across the globe to discuss important topics of interest. Here's Father Tom.
Welcome to Ancient Faith Today. This is Father Tom Soroka, and I'm so glad that you're with us this evening. We'll be taking your calls in a bit at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka Trudy will be answering your calls tonight, so please make sure to turn the show volume off before you come on air. Now, to participate online, we're going to switch it up a bit tonight. First of all, I need to let you know, those of you that are on Facebook, there may be a problem with the Facebook feed. But the timing is really good because here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask you to go to youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries. Check it again, youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries. And what you're going to notice there is that the show is being live streamed right now. Now, what I would like to do is use the live chat feature on YouTube, and let's get into a conversation while the show is going on. So I'm asking you, if you're online, go to youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries, and you'll see the YouTube that is going live right now. You'll see the chat on the right, or if you're using your phone, it's on the bottom, and let's chat while the show is going on. Remember also that you can send us a text message to 412-206-5012. That's 412-206-5012. We already have some texts coming in. And as always, you can send us an email at aft@ancientfaith.com. So go to youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries. Join us in the live chat right now. Let's get started. Tonight, we're joined by an inspiring guest to tell us about his journey of faith. Of course, everyone has a journey of faith and everyone has a story worthy of sharing. But what's going to be fascinating about tonight's show is we're going to talk to a prominent surgeon who is also a deacon in the Greek Orthodox Church. I think this is interesting because we live in a time where healthcare is so much a part of our life. We're just coming through a pandemic. People are worried about their health. We also have the issue of the amount of time and energy that people put into modern healthcare. It's kind of overwhelming. And I might even say, as a priest, and I'll talk about my own healthcare journey, sometimes I think people substitute healthcare for religion. So our guest's perspective tonight is going to be very important. Now, as a country, The United States spends over $4 trillion a year on healthcare. That's over $12,600 per person per year. In my own case, I have several fairly serious conditions that require daily medicines and quarterly doctor's visits, blood tests, monitoring. I take weekly infusions, daily inhalers, a host of pills that I take. But as a Christian, I know that I'm not simply a body of flesh and blood. I have a soul. And I try to be cognizant of that. With all the time that I spend attending to my health, I should at least spend as much or more time healing my soul. I even preached about this on Sunday as I was teaching about the healing of the paralytic. When the paralyzed man is placed in front of Jesus by his friends, he doesn't speak directly to the subject of physical healing. When the man is placed in front of him, he simply says, "Be of good cheer. Your sins are forgiven you." And it's only after people question why he had said that he wanted to prove that he had power to forgive sins, that he told the men, "Rise, take up your bed, and walk." There's an important lesson there that we are both soul and body, and we can't forget that. And I think our guest is going to help us understand, how do we deal with this intersection of health, physical health, and spiritual health? So with that, I'd like to welcome our guest this evening, Father Deacon Theodore Saclarides. Father Deacon Theodore was raised in Clearwater, Florida, and he grew up in a typically ethnic family, as many of us did that grew up as Orthodox Christians. He achieved his undergrad from Vanderbilt University. He majored in math and chemistry. He went to medical school at the University of Miami, and he now teaches where he did his residency at Rush University, where he specializes in lower gastrointestinal surgery. He's practiced at Rush, at Loyola, and he's currently vice chairman of surgery at Rush University. He's published over 100 manuscripts, edited 11 books, but he's also the proud father of 5 and the grandfather of 10, and he was ordained to the Holy Diaconate in 2015. Father Deacon Theodore, welcome to Ancient Faith Today.
Thank you, Father Tom. It's an honor to be here today.
Oh, I'm really going to enjoy this program because we had a little chance to chat before the program, and it was fascinating to learn about your life. What I would like to do, if you could, is start out a little bit about growing up as an Orthodox Christian. As I said, I share that also, but it seems like your journey kind of took you away from the church for a while before you came back. Is that correct?
That's very true. I grew up in a very ethnic Greek family. I am second generation Greek, and our spiritual life was very much connected to tradition. And, growing up in it, we didn't really question or study or learn why we do what we do. It wasn't until later in life that through studying and reading that I learned more about our faith. So I grew up in Florida and went to Nashville, Tennessee for my medical school. And there was a church in Nashville, Tennessee. It was very small. But being a student, I didn't have a car. Transportation was difficult. If I was to go to church, I would have to get a ride. So it was difficult. And then following that, I did my medical school at the University of Miami. And the further along I got in my education, the further apart I grew from the church. And then during my residency, where the work schedules were a lot different then than they are now, on Sundays I was either going on call or coming off call, having been up, for the majority of the night previously. So sleep was of paramount importance, and I basically departed from the church, and that I consider that a very dark time in my life. And then I married, started to have children. And then as I was raising my children, I realized the importance of getting them involved in the church. And so I started to take my children to church, and that brought me back. And I just remember that, being in church became such an emotional experience.
Yeah, I know it's hard, and I appreciate the emotion with which you're feeling that. I think what I would like to do is maybe go back a little bit before we talk about your return to the church, and I know how deeply you feel that. Let's talk, Father Deacon Theodore, a little bit about what pulled you away, because we're kind of dealing with that today, right? People they have busy lives. We have a lot more professional people in the church than we did, I would say, 30, 40 years ago. And people really are trying, but they have so many ways that they're pulling themselves into with their kids' activities and social activities. Tell me specifically what pulled you away from church. Let's share that with everyone before we go to your return.
Yeah. So it was basically the time commitment involved in study and training that didn't allow much time for anything else. I could have made the time, but I just didn't. And I regret that to this day. But it would have been very helpful if on campus in undergraduate there had been an Orthodox Christian fellowship program. That would have been very, very key. Social media back in the 70s was not as well developed as it is now. So being able to access programs like this was not possible. So that's pretty much it. It was just a commitment to training and education that
before we go on. Yeah, before we go on with your story, let's do a couple of things here. Let's remind everybody, we'd love to hear your thoughts about a lot of the subjects that we're going to talk about tonight, about spirituality and health and physical health, spiritual health, but also I think from a person that is a professional in the arena of medicine or law or all of the professions that just require so much time. What have you learned about balancing that? It was very interesting, Father Deacon, that you said you wish that you had at that time like an OCF or something on campus that would have connected you to church. That's a really good testimony because it shows you the importance of these formative years where you unfortunately kind of had to make a choice, right? You had to decide, am I going to study or am I going to go to church?
Right. Yeah. And plus going to undergraduate school in the Deep South, there just weren't too many Orthodox Christians around. I mean, in my circle of friends, I was it. Just about every other denomination was well represented, and they knew nothing about the Orthodox faith. And so I didn't really have friends that I could make contact with and worship with. I felt really alone. So an OCF chapter would have been big. And then later on in residency, there just wasn't I was on call my first year of training. I was on call every other night for 6 months, meaning I was in the hospital every other night. But and it's different nowadays. Nowadays there are hour restrictions, how many hours a week a resident can work, but I think it's 70 hours now. But back in my day, during my internship, it was 36 hours on, 12 hours off. And then, you'd go home in between and go home and rest and sleep, and then back the next day, and you're staying in the hospital that night. Now that got better as time went on. Yeah, that got better as time went on. But like so many things in life, it's important to establish a routine. It's important to maintain momentum, and it just I fell away.
Interesting.
But,
let's remind our listeners, if you'd like to join us in the chat room, go to youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries, and you'll see the live stream right there. Our live stream for Facebook is not working tonight. Send us a text at 412-206-5012. So, Father Deacon, I interrupted you. I appreciate your allowing me to probe there a little bit. So, when you started to have children, that's when you went back to church. Tell us about that.
Well, so my oldest daughter, Catherine, was 4 years old. I remember I just felt the need to start bringing her to church. And one of the first services that I took her to was the midnight resurrection service. And I knew that the church was going to be crowded. So I told my wife, I said, we need to get there early. I'm going to bring her, and I need to get there early. So I said, I'm going to get there at 11:30. And little did I realize that, by 10 o'clock, it was standing room only. So here I am. I'm standing in the narthex, holding a 4-year-old, holding her for, the next 2.5 hours. But it was a deciding moment in my life. And then I would bring her, and then my second daughter was 2 at the time. We would go to church, and one time we went to a pan-Orthodox service, and there were 40 clergy, 6 hierarchs, and that pretty much kind of sealed it for my kids. And our children bring out the best in us, so I became a regular attendee. And then in the early 90s, our priest at the time, Father George Schoolis, blessed be his memory, approached me and wanted to know if I wanted to serve in the altar as I told you before, as a black robe, somebody to supervise the altar boys and cut the prosphoro and help get the service set up and whatnot. And I did that for about 25 years. And then one of our subsequent priests told me about the diaconate program at Holy Cross in Boston. And at first I didn't really respond. And then one day he downloaded the application, thrust it in my face, and said, fill it out. So I did. And I finished the program and became ordained in 2015. And I've been serving at Saints Peter and Paul in Glenview, Illinois, for the last 7 years. Hello?
Oh, sorry about that. I love
That's
that
right.
your priest was pretty forward about that. In other words, he was just saying, here, do this. I know you can do this, even if you don't know that you're capable of doing this. He obviously saw something in you that was very worthy of serving in the church at a different level. So I wanted to ask you, with that, how do you deal with the issue of time management? So, for instance, your time, you are teaching in the university, you're the head of surgery, you have your own practice, but you still have the church that you're serving. So how do you juggle all of that and help us understand what your secret is so that we can also learn from that.
I don't have a secret. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and I still cover the emergency room and take emergency consultations in the hospital.
Amazing.
And so I keep my beeper in the back of the altar, and during liturgy, the beeper will go off, and I'll look at the priest, and he's like, looks at me like, what's going on, and is this absolutely, I get looks from the priest, and so I have to figure out when I can answer my beeper. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. It's especially hard during Lent when we have services 5 nights a week. So right. With Vespers and pre-sanctified liturgy, etc. So it's hard. It's especially hard during Lent, and it's physically exhausting for me. But I've been able to do both. Rarely have I missed a liturgy because of an emergency, but there have been many occasions when, as soon as liturgy is done, I get in my car and drive to the hospital, which it's part of the job. So I've been able to do both. Time management is very difficult, but I get it done.
I think the issue with the time management also is to remember that, and it's kind of like what I said at the beginning. Now, I'm saying it as a patient, right? I'm saying it as a receiver of healthcare, that I'm spending all of this time worrying about my body, and my body is given to me by God. I have to take good care of it. I have to watch my health. I have to serve my parishioners, so I need my health. But what I love about what you're saying is that, we can't forget the spiritual life. In other words, you could very easily say, I'm too tired. I had a rough night. I had so many patients, but you're showing up at the services. You're serving the services. You're helping the priest to do those things. Correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, I would, so the two aspects of my life, the diaconate and the surgeon, one helps the other. I would like to think that it's a two-way street, but it's not. I think that being a deacon has helped me far and away to be a surgeon, more than being a surgeon has helped me be a deacon. And I'm so grateful for that. Being a surgeon has done it's helped me in the diaconate. It's made me comfortable with my hospital visits. It's made me comfortable seeing patients who, are in emotional distress. I'm very task oriented. I mean, I've had to be because of my first profession. And so I can take on my assignments and I get organized and I complete them. But the arrow is definitely pointing more towards the diaconate helping me being a surgeon in so many ways.
Unpack some of those for us. How does being a deacon help? Because I would think it would sort of be the other way, right? Like, I think of, the business or the organization or the administrative things that I do. I gotta bring that into my priesthood. But you're saying the opposite. You're saying that being a deacon has made you a better surgeon. How so?
Well, it's helped me approach illness and suffering. Like you were referring to last Sunday's gospel of the paralytic who was carried by the 4 men. The paralytic sees the crowds surrounding Jesus. He doesn't give up. He persists. He can't get into the house. He doesn't give up. They break open the roof, and the 4 men lower him. And he has persisted in his efforts. He perseveres. And I think the lesson to be learned there is that when it comes to our health, nobody's going to be a better advocate for ourselves than ourselves. And I think this paralytic was probably urging the men on. He was probably directing them, and he persisted. The parable about the other paralytic is equally important. The one where the paralytic was waiting by the pool, waiting for the waters to be stirred by the descent of the angel. And this paralytic had been waiting 38 years, and Jesus walks by and approaches the man, and his question to him was, "Do you want to be cured?" And it's basically a yes or no question, right? I mean, who doesn't want to be cured? All the guy had to do was say yes. Right. But what does he do? He uses it as an opportunity to complain, basically, and say, "Hey, I've got no one to take me into the water, and by the time I get there, somebody has beaten me." So that has taught me that as we approach health, as we approach illness, we have to want to get better. We have to be our own advocate. We have to desire to get better. We have to persevere. And those are two very important gospels in the Bible. I've also learned that the importance of familial support during illness is key. It's so heartwarming for me to see spouses coming with the patient. And it's very sad to see people coming alone at a time where many of them are fighting for their lives, yet here they are alone. Yeah. So spousal support and familial support is key. Now, I've tossed this over in my mind. I think sometimes, well, maybe they're alone because they're trying to spare their family members worry. They're trying to keep them from being overly concerned. But I don't think that's right. I think that family has to get involved early because this illness is not only affecting the patient, but it's also affecting the family. And it may help the family members transition into what may or may not come in the future.
Interesting.
It's also the diaconate's also helped me look for the silver lining in sickness and illness. For example, at one point, Jesus' disciples asked Christ, "Is this person ill because of the sins he's committed or the sins of his parents?"
Right.
Yeah. And he says it's neither. It's that this is an opportunity for the glory of God to become manifest. So what that teaches me, and I tell patients, sometimes I'll ask my patients after they've recovered, I ask them, I said, "Why do you think this happened to you? Your illness, your cancer, whatever." And I said, "It's because now you're giving an opportunity to help others. If you're a cancer survivor, join support groups. If you've been diagnosed with, say, multiple sclerosis, join support groups. Volunteer to talk to patients. Let your doctor and your hospital know that you are available." And this is especially so with my line of work, where sometimes we have to do a procedure, an operation involving a colostomy, and a patient can learn a lot from talking to other patients in a similar situation, and they can learn how to manage this disfiguring surgery. They can learn how to travel. They can learn what their limitations are, and so I try to let the patients know to always look for the silver lining, because that helps for the glory of God to become manifest.
Good. Father, let's hold on. Yeah. Let's hold on there 1 second. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We can finish that thought on the other side of the break, but I also want to get into, you've seen such suffering. I want to talk a little bit about how do you see the meaning of suffering? What advice can you offer people that are listening right now and that will listen to this about giving themselves a perspective about suffering, especially if it's really a grave illness? I want to talk about the pandemic and so forth. On the other side of the break, we're going to continue our conversation with Father Deacon Theodore, and we're talking about the intersection of medical science and faith and how he has brought that to his practice. Lots of lessons to learn. Give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO. Send us a text at 412-206-5012, or join us on YouTube, youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries. We will be right back.
Father Tom will be back in a moment. In the meantime, the lines are open at 855-237-2346. Don't go away.
New from Ancient Faith Publishing.
Secret Turning, a collection of short stories by Stephen Signori. So, I'm out in the lot at Auto Heaven, and up comes Father Nahum from behind, grabs me, gives me a kiss, and tells me he's happy to see me. Wearing his worn-out dungaree bib overalls with the beat-up straw Stetson, pulling his wire basket, going shopping on the avenue. "How old is Nahum, anyway?" Sharky asked. "Older than he acts," Lefty said. To be ready said, "Yeah, and younger than he seems." So he says to me, "Theodore, the church is much better when you're there. It's not the whole family when we don't see you. You know, God misses his children, and Nana Olga misses her son."
Now available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook at store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Ancient Faith Today and Father Tom Soroka. Give us a call at 855-237-2346. Here once again is Father Tom.
We're back with Deacon Theodore Saclarides, and we're talking about a surgeon's journey of faith. We were just talking about how Father Deacon Theodore relates to his patients. He is a surgeon, and obviously, Deacon Theodore, you deal with these very serious life and death issues. So let me ask you kind of straight up, you probably give a lot of bad news to people. In other words, these are things they don't want to hear. What is your philosophy about how to deliver this news? And if somebody says to you as a surgeon, why did this happen to me? Or this isn't fair. What kind of things do you say? So how do you deliver this difficult news? And how do you deal with the reaction?
Well, that's a very good question, because skills at delivering bad news are not something that's taught either in medical school or training. I recall a survey done a few years ago where they asked medical oncologists, cancer experts, where did they learn how to deliver bad news? And I think 10% of those surveyed said there were formal didactics, teaching sessions, et cetera, on how to do this, which is unfortunate. But there's a definite skill that's required, and what's so important in delivering bad news is the setup. In other words, preparing the patient, and I think it's important for it be one-on-one or with the family present in a quiet area, and that the doctor take off his white coat. He or she takes off their white coat, sits, turns their beeper.
Why is that important?
Well, because they want to hear. I think patients want to hear what's going on from a human being and not a scientist. It may seem more personal and less sterile in the way the message is being delivered. I think that the doctor should turn their beeper off, maybe get one of their partners to cover them for an hour while they have this discussion. The doctor should sit side by side with the patient rather than be standing up at the foot of the bed, looking down on the patient. If possible, not to have a huge desk in between the doctor and the patient, because that can act as a barrier. But it's and there's ways to do it. First of all, you ask the patient, what is your understanding of what's going on? So you get a sense of the baseline level of what does the patient know, and that'll tell the doctor what direction to go to, what kind of language to use, etc. And then the patient's going to go through a variety of emotions. First one maybe being anger. Why is this happening to me? Or why did my primary care physician discover this earlier? And it's difficult. It's probably not a good idea to go from one emotion to the next without the patient recovering or resolving the stage that you were just in. Because if they're still angry, they're not going to really hear. It's not going to register the results of the tests, etc. It's interesting that surgeons are frequently ranked among the worst in terms of their skill in giving bad news. And the reason for that is because sometimes a surgeon has to deliver bad news, in the emergency room, for example, or in the recovery room after a biopsy has been done. Those are not good places to deliver bad news. So the surgeon right away is at a disadvantage in terms of the skill of giving bad news.
Yeah, it's sterile, it's institutional, it's unfamiliar. Yeah, everybody's tired.
Of all the doctors that the patient has come in contact with, their relationship with the surgeon is probably the shortest, because the surgeon has been called upon at the last minute to do the biopsy or to do the surgery, whereas the patient's relationship with their primary care physician is over a longer period of time. There's been more trust. They have a relationship. So it requires a lot of skill.
Yeah, and does the conversation in your experience ever turn to the spiritual, not just at those times, but like the relationship with your patients? Do you ever have an opportunity? I know there's, you have to be careful and you don't want to infringe on people's freedom, but do you ever have the opportunity to talk about God with people and the spiritual life?
Sure.
Really? Tell us about some of that.
So I don't go down that pathway unless I get some clue or hint from the patient that will allow me to go that way.
Sure.
For example, I remember one patient that she had cancer. It was quite advanced, and we did the surgery. I was not able to get everything out because of her anatomy and the way the tumor was positioned, etc. So I went to talk with her later, and I was expecting a lot of anger from her. That what do you mean you couldn't get everything out? And I was saying the Jesus prayer the whole way to that encounter. Which I do frequently because it helps me in whenever I expect a difficult situation. So I went and talked to her, and then her reaction was, praise Jesus that you were able to get 90% out. And we will get that last 10% somehow, so that opened my eyes right away. And,
fascinating.
But I've had encounters where I can just feel the descent of the Holy Spirit in the room, and it's palpable. And I recently had a patient, a couple came in, and they had a Jewish last name, and I was expecting a different sort of encounter than I had, because during our discussion, the couple kept referring to their faith and how their faith was going to get them through this. And so we finished the consultation, and at the end, I felt compelled to go into the faith and aspect. And I asked him, I said, can you tell me what you mean by your faith? Fully expecting them to be Jewish. And he was Jewish, but he was a Messianic Jew. He is a Messianic Jew. In other words, he converted to Christianity and believes that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. And he's written books, and he's a professor at the Moody Bible Institute here in Chicago. And we've had an incredible relationship over the last few months. But there have been times where patients have asked me to pray and with them.
Really?
That's been an eye opener for me.
They just say, would you pray? Is that like before the surgery, or when does that come up?
Well, the first time it happened to me was when I was a resident. I was making rounds late at night, checking everybody, tucking everybody into bed. And this one young African-American patient was going for a kidney transplant the next day. And she asked me to pray with her. And of course, at that time, it was during what I call my dark period. And I was very nervous. I didn't know what to do. How do I pray with somebody? Now I know what to do, I think, but just situations like that have really opened my eyes, and I'll tell you that at every moment in a major every major operation has crunch time. In other words, there's a crucial step that will determine the outcome of that operation. And if a surgeon knows when he or she is getting to that crucial step, and when I see it coming, and I know that this is what's going to determine the outcome, I find that the Jesus prayer really, really calms me. It soothes me, and I get through. And
I love it.
So that's ways that the diaconate has helped open my eyes and helped me be a surgeon. I never feel alone.
Thank you.
I never feel alone.
That's so helpful to know that. And I think that's a good perspective for many of our professionals, and especially medical professionals, which are doing such important work to help people. Let's remind our listeners, you can give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO. You can send us a text to 412-206-5012, or join us at youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries. Click on the live stream and chat with us there. Father Deacon, I want to go just a little bit deeper here. You deal with healing, but you deal with people that I am sure, and I had told you before, my father suffered from very serious gastrointestinal issues, and eventually he died from it. My uncle had it also. He had very bad colon issues, and there's a lot of pain involved. It's like a constant pain. How do you see, as an Orthodox Christian and as a medical professional, how do you see the problem of pain, the problem of suffering, and your alleviation of it? Do you try to give people a kind of perspective on pain and how they might deal with it, both from a physical and a spiritual standpoint? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about suffering and pain.
Well, fortunately, in medicine, we have specialists in pain management. So I am rarely called upon to do chronic pain management. In fact, I think a lot of physicians steer clear of it because of addiction issues and not wanting to overprescribe. So we have experts who deal with chronic pain management, and I rely upon them very heavily. But I think it's important.
But let me go. I do want to ask you. Let me approach it from this direction then. I think some people would say, even from like a pseudo-religious standpoint, right? They would say that managing pain through medicine is not what we should do. In other words, they would say something like, God wants you to suffer, so you're not going to take don't take the medicine, right? Just suffer through the pain, and it will purify you and it will help you. How do you balance the idea of suffering and the idea of pain management? In other words, as an Orthodox Christian, do you have views on pain management? Do you feel like people should use medicines as much as possible to alleviate pain?
I do. I do. I feel like medications and knowledge and technology, to some extent, are gifts from God, and that they should be utilized. I don't think that I'm not a believer in that to experience pain is a purifying
right
act. I don't ascribe to that at all. So yeah. I think that if you're in pain, how are you going to think clearly? I mean, how can you pray effectively? I don't know how that can be done. Maybe a caller can help us answer that question. I'm a firm believer.
I think that's a wonderful thought. In other words, and what you said before, in other words, taking that medicine in order to alleviate your pain can help you have clarity of mind and clarity of thought. But then you also mentioned previously the idea of being careful so that you don't become addicted to these medicines, at least some of them that are habit forming. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's a tremendous problem going on in the country right now with opioid addiction. And so it's a fine line between providing relief and then going too far in the opposite direction and making somebody reliant upon narcotics.
Right, exactly. So let's remind our listeners, there's still time to send us a text to 412-206-5012. So, Father Deacon, tell us a little bit about, reflecting on your medical career and life lessons that you bring to the church. In other words, I do find it fascinating that there are so many stories of healing in the scriptures. Healing is a way that Jesus establishes his messiahship, right? He shows us who he is. He shows us that he has power over sin and over sickness and over death. How about when people come to you and say, well, why can't I be healed? Why do I read these stories in the Bible and I hear about these people getting healed, but I'm having this chronic issue and I'm not able to be healed. So what wisdom can you bring to the table to say, these are the things that I've learned in melding or weaving together both my medical experience and my spiritual experience?
Yeah. Well, for those types of patients, it's hard to get them to change their mind. They have felt that, many of them have felt that way for a long period of time, are convinced of the rightness in what they believe. And what I try to do is just tell them, there's a reason that you're here in my office today, and that you're here because God has brought us together.
Oh, wow.
And that maybe they should listen to what I'm saying. It's very hard for some people to surrender that control and be comfortable with losing control over decisions that are being made. Some people just don't allow themselves to be cared for. They don't allow themselves to be loved. They don't allow that loss of control so that they can accept the help and support of others. I don't know that I can change their minds based on one encounter with them, one or two encounters with them, and that's especially so with some faiths that don't allow transfusion of blood products. And I will ask them specifically, if I have to make a decision to let you die or give you a transfusion, what would you choose? And that particular group of people will invariably say, let me go. I don't
Jehovah's
want
Witnesses. Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be transfused because they believe that their salvation will be adversely affected if they get a transfusion. Right. So it's not likely that I'm going to ever change somebody's opinion who when they feel so strongly about something and have done so for quite some time. But I try, I try. I said, there's a reason that we're here together today. And we're brought together because of, divine intervention, and there's a plan that's bigger than us. And maybe you should listen and allow yourself to lose a little bit of control so that others can care for you and others can love you.
Yeah, I see the wisdom in that, that people have to be able to, I think people often that really have a difficult time reconciling their medical condition with the reality of their life is, I think you hit it on the head, that there's a kind of, there's maybe like a pride there or control where they don't feel, or they finally come to the recognition that they're not actually in control of their life, right? There are some things that are simply out of their control and it can't be fixed, or,
right.
The doctor is going to do the best they can, and the medical technology is going to do the best it can. But in the end, they have to kind of, leave it to what we would say is God. Have you seen people actually, because of their medical condition, come to faith? Does that ever happen where they have that opportunity to kind of slow down and think about the meaning of life? Have you ever seen things like that happen?
Oh, sure. That as a result of what they've been through, whether it be surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy, that they have changed the focus in their life, have either retired and are now spending more time with family. Sure, that happens a lot. I had one very prominent attorney here in Chicago with cancer who could not take time out of his schedule to come for his visit with me. And everything was done by telemedicine, even the original consultation, computer, video, clinic. And the first time I met him was on the day of the surgery, because he simply couldn't take the time out from his practice, his lawyer practice, to come and meet the surgeon and talk about stuff. So that was the first time I met him. And interestingly, he had a great outcome. He's cured. And now he comes for all of his appointments face to face. And when he comes, he's wearing a golf cap, and he's just been playing golf or spending time with his family. He retired. So yes, I mean, that does happen a lot. And it's nice to see that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, they finally kind of come out of their workaholic attitude, right? Because they have to attend to themselves. That's a really good reminder. Father Deacon Theodore, any last words before we wrap up the show tonight?
Well, just some words, advice for professionals that don't fall into the rut that I did during my medical training years, but stay active in the church. And it all starts in the home. And if you have children, bring them to church early on. It's so easy for me to tell when it's time to give communion. It's so easy to tell which children have been coming since birth and which ones have not been, because of just the fear factor. The child that receives communion excitedly and without fear is such a joy to see. But it all starts in the home and with prayer. Make prayer a daily routine. Pick a quiet place, establish a prayer corner, fill it with icons. And some people go, well, how do I pray? What do I pray? I'm not that creative. I can't think of what to say. Well, there are written prayers, and people can read these prayers, and it relieves you of some of the pressure of trying to think of something to say. But perhaps the most important thing about prayer that I've learned is allow for some quiet time, silence, because prayer is really a conversation, right? It's really it's a conversation between you and God. And if one person is talking the whole time, you can't hear what the other person is saying. So I think part of the prayer routine should be silence, and pay attention to the signals and the thoughts that are in your brain, because those are coming from God, and we can get a sense of direction and peace from just listening to our thoughts. So it starts in the home, a prayer corner, daily prayer, morning and evening. Make it a routine. Bring the whole family there, and bring your kids to church for communion, and you'll be well set. You'll be well prepared.
Excellent. Father Deacon Theodore, thank you so much. Lots of wisdom there, lots of experience that you bring, but also that you bring your faith into your profession. I think it's a wonderful example for all of us that are working in the professional world, that, we don't have to kind of bifurcate our life. We don't have to say, I'm not allowed to be an Orthodox Christian in my profession, but in fact, you're showing that it is possible to bring the faith of the church, to bring our faith in Christ to our work. And God provides the opportunity for us to witness to him and to find people that also are in need of that light and that truth. Father Theodore Saclarides, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Father Tom. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yes. Hello. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Want to share a few final thoughts. I want to offer my sincere thanks for Father Deacon Theodore for joining us tonight. Thanks also to Matushka Trudy for engineering the program, our show production assistant, Melissa Graff, for her work behind the scenes. For everybody that's listening in, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I wanted to read a short quote from St. Luke of Crimea. Now, if you're not familiar with St. Luke, he is actually a kind of contemporary of ours. He only died in 1961. He was glorified in 1996, and he was a surgeon. They call him St. Luke, the Blessed Surgeon. And he wrote about the meaning of sorrow. So I wanted to read this short quote for you. He writes, "Continuously, people ask why the Lord God sends them sorrows, and many times very great trials. It is very important for every Christian to understand that our sorrows are sent according to the will of God, who is always good and saving. Most of the time, they are not sent to us as punishments for our sins, but in order for us to reorient our paths and our hearts, or they are sent as a response to requests that we offer to God. Many times, people expect God to accomplish what they ask in prayers to Him in the manner that they think is best. God, however, continuously responds to our prayers in a totally different manner, and not according to how they wished or could imagine. And that's our show for tonight. Remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ancient Faith Today. Share out our program. Give us your feedback. Contact us with any ideas or topics that you might want to hear about. Now, I'll be off next week, but we'll be back on Tuesday, August 9th for the next edition of Ancient Faith Today. Good night, everybody.